Hello, welcome back to another episode of Ask Lattice. Now today I have Orrin Coley on the sofa next to me, and we are going to be tackling a couple of really big topics which I think are going to be relevant to the indoor and outdoor climbers of you and those of you who are also into your bouldering specialisation. Now, a little bit first off about Orrin. I'm sure many of you recognise him from the competition circuit, and also he has a pretty sort of active Instagram profile, and is constantly posting that cool, stuff outside, comp boulder problems, he's setting and things. But Orrin's a GB competition team member. He has put up and established a whole host of really hard first ascents in the UK on boulders. Some of them are link-ups, some of them are individual problems themselves, at a place called Forest Rock. That's the right place, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's had a really good progression of performance over the years. I think you've been climbing 20 years or so now?
Just over 18 years now.
Just over 18 years.
Over 18.
Yeah. And I've watched you from being a teenager.
Yeah.
You're 25 now?
Yeah.
Yeah, 25. And I know Ollie coached you for a period as well, and I saw your progression over the years, and you've become one of the very best climbers in the country now, which is really cool to see when I see that progression through.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what insights Orrin has. So maybe to kick off actually can you tell us a little bit about your climbing history? Like, where did you come from? Where did you climb originally? Have you always been in the same areas? What have you been into?
Well, I guess my climbing history is it's maybe not as exciting as some people might expect. My dad did a bit of climbing at the local climbing centre, and wanted me to come and have a try. I didn't want to try for a long time because I thought he went up doing dangerous stuff, climbing mountains. I would have been like 5 years old at this point, and it wasn't until I was about 6 where eventually I started going. We went like every week or two in the weekend, just top roping on the small little wall there, and then eventually I started doing the kids clubs there, which just went through that. And after a while I was like, do you want to try a competition? Do you think you'd enjoy that? My dad's always done a lot of martial arts and stuff, and he used to compete a bit in that, so I thought maybe I'd quite enjoy doing something like that. And again, didn't want to do it. I didn't want to compete. Scary, no. I'd have been younger than 11. It wasn't until I was 11, so in 2007, where I went and did my first competition, and I absolutely loved it. It was it was called the Bricks back then, but it's now known as the BMC Youth Climbing Series.
Yeah.
And
this is the UK Youth Climbing Series.
It's like the grassroots sort of competition for young British climbers, for anyone wanting to get kids into competing or having them have some goals with it. It's a starting point to explore, I think.
Yeah.
And eventually he convinced me to try it, and I loved it. I did quite well. I came third. I was like, this is fun. I like this. So I went and did all the rest and qualified for the national finals, where I went. And I think in the youth climbing scene in Britain, I feel personally I was always around at them, and I was always nearly there. I would often be in finals or the top 10. But I don't think I ever really made a major splash. There was never a defining moment really where it's
suddenly crossed over.
There's lots of people who I've grown up with competing and I'm close friends with now, where they did it and they won the national finals their first year, or podiumed, or got very well, and quickly made the British team, and then they were off. And I never really had that. I progressed slowly in terms of competing through. Don't really know why. I guess I just wasn't as good, maybe. Maybe I wasn't. I think maybe I wasn't as focused as perhaps some of them were then.
What age did you make the transfer to climbing outside and really getting on the boulders? Because I think that's actually, for me, where I started to notice you almost really find your groove and your zone. Because you obviously did, well in competitions. Let's not take away from that.
Yeah.
But when you started going outside and bouldering and starting to do first ascents and, repeats, you really start to find your groove.
Well, to be honest, I first started properly going out to be like, I'm going to go try this climb. It had been with a friend, Will. We went to like Forest Rock or Raven Tor or Rubicon, sometimes Stanage. We had a couple trips, even with like Buster Martin a few times. And that would have been around the age of 14 or 15, maybe 16. Will was a few years older than me, so he eventually got a car and we'd go out, or his parents took us places. So I had like, one of my first sort of notable times outside would have been with him at Raven Tor, where we got on Weed Killer Traverse. I think I did that second go. I fell off the jug on the first go. It wasn't until I was about 17 where I had like some trips abroad. I went to Fontainebleau for a trip. I climbed like my first Font 7Cs. I did like 3 that trip, which was really psyched about. And then when I was 18, I got a car. I had a trip to the Peak District for my birthday in the summer with a few mates, and we just did all sorts. I did my first 8A that trip. So again, I did my first 8A at 18, which obviously climbing 8A at 18 is impressive. Climbing 8A is impressive from anyone, really. But in the modern sort of era, it's not necessarily groundbreaking, I don't think. Then we had a trip to Font, and it was at that point when I got a car, I started getting out loads. I'd go out to the Peak more, I'd go to Forest Rock a lot because it's 15 minutes from my house, and I just started working my way through things there, projecting things there. Doing the established climbs and link ups, and then trying to add my own. And since basically that point, I think maybe when I was 18 or 19, I did, probably 19, I did a link up at Forest Rock, which was like my first thing there. It was a 7C plus called Witchcraft.
So if you hit, Font 8A at 18 or so, I think this is really interesting for everyone watching, that you haven't, it's not some easy win and you just immediately landed at Font 8A after climbing for 3 years. You were a steady progression through. How long did it take you to get from Font 8A at 18 to then Font 8B and 8B plus in your 20s? How many years did that take? Was it a sudden overnight success again, or was it ticking away?
When I was about 18, I did my first 8A in 2013. The next would have been 2014. I had done 2. Yeah. So that's 3 all time at that point. 2015, I had done 8 8As and 1 8A plus. 2015, I actually remember being quite good for me because it was this point of, I was going out and I was doing 8As in like a couple sessions at that point. Some of them I even got in like a session. It was like a real benchmark for me of like, I've leveled up now. I've not established myself as an 8A climber, but like I'm doing them. I'm going out with the intention to do them, and it'll happen. It's not like this is a thing to work through and eventually I'll get there. And obviously did my first 8A plus, which was like a link up traverse at Forest Rock, but it was still like a really meaningful one for me. 2016 was the big one for me, because that was the point when I did my first 8B. I did my first, and then literally like a month or 2 later, I did my second, like in 2 sessions. So the first one I did it took me 2.5 years of projecting. And then the next one, I just went and tried it. I got sprayed down with all the beta, and then I just did it. And like a weekend trip, it was crazy, really insane moment for me. But I'd also like bumped up like my 8A pluses loads, my 8As a load more. And it was like, okay, there's some consistency here. Like there's progress, there's obvious progression through the years. It didn't feel quick because it was going from like, this is a space of 3 years to doing like, I guess to go from 8A to 8B. But
you're basically building up a really good pyramid and foundation of grades all the way up through. Exactly what we always tell, everyone who's trying to move up through those grades of, don't just build a little tower of like 1 8A or 2 8As, 2 8A pluses, 2 8Bs, and constantly trying to move up through the grades and never having any consistency all the way through. Yeah. So it is important to go and do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think. So
like consistency, building up a pyramid of grades has always been really important to me. After like 2016, it continued along that same sort of trend. The following year, I did like my first 8B+, which again, it was like a link-up traverse, but it was like way and above another level to anything I'd ever done. It's still probably one of the harder things I've ever done at this point now. And that was like 2017, I guess, yeah, is when I did my first 8B+. I haven't climbed harder than 8B+ since then, but I have added a lot more. Notably, like last year was a good year for me, as like another one of those moments where it was like, I've progressed, I'm way more consistent. I set myself a goal last year, was like, I wanted to do 3 8B+, and I did that. And then I was like, I want to do more. So I went and I did more. I like found more, I pushed myself. I pushed myself maybe a bit too hard in the pursuit of like working at my highest level I was at, where by the end of the year, I felt pretty broken. I felt like I'd pushed it a little bit too much, but like I'd proved to myself like, okay, I can be at this level. This is it, and this is the progress. And like also throughout that year of being like, I want to do 8B+ now, I was also consistent enough with 8As where it's like I was going out and literally every 8A I tried, I was trying to flash. I think I flashed like 2 of them, maybe 1 of them. But like I would always go to try and flash them, and if I didn't, I'd do them in like a handful of tries. And that was basically...
So now, you know, projecting at the 8C level, at a very rough number, what does your pyramid of 8B+, 8B, 8A+, 8A look like? Is it 10 8B pluses?
Almost exactly as I think you would expect it to look like. There's like 80 odd 8As, about half the amount of AA pluses, about half the amount of 8Bs, and then about half the amount of 8B pluses. Like
good shape.
Yeah, it's a nice triangle. It's the below 8As where my like triangle is lacked now, because I've just like gotten really focused. I like trying hard. I like going and trying hard things, and although I know I can do 8As quickly these days, it's a feel-good thing for me, and it like boosts my motivation and like self-confidence to go and then try harder things doing them. So I often don't try things below 8A anymore, just because I like the feeling of pushing myself. It's what I have fun with climbing. The downside of that is I think you sometimes might have less fun, because there's lots of things that I actively miss out because I just don't care.
Yeah.
It sounds like really elitist, and I know lots of people don't agree with that sort of way of doing things or like it, but that just happens to be the way I have fun with it. So I'll have loads of 7s to go and do when I'm older and weaker and injured. So
just like me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that leads us quite nicely into our kind of first half of main topic that I wanted to kind of tackle with you today. And I think for, you know, everyone out there watching is that most people, you're climbing outside and you're training and climbing indoors, and you clearly do this as well. You have an indoor competition element to what you're doing, and you have an outdoor performance on rock. How do you, or what do you see as being the successful approach that you found with mixing those two? Because I think it's a really tricky area to get right. Where have you gone with that? What have you learned?
I mean, I want to start off and say, like, there's an element of luck to that, I think, more than people would imagine.
Luck in what part?
Luck in the fact that somehow I've gotten away with doing both to a reasonable level. I think it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn. I think it's extraordinarily hard to perform to your absolute best in both of them. And that is where I've always been torn, because I know for a fact, like, I do not perform to my best because I try to do both.
Yeah.
So
what have you tried to do to? Because I think we all try and shuffle and juggle lots of different things.
Yeah.
And I think the useful stuff for people to know is You know,
Well-
you're clearly at a very elite level. What's your version of the juggling look like? What
guess-
strategies are you using?
First of all, with indoor climbing, there's two specific things I enjoy a lot with indoor climbing. I love modern comp climbing as indoor climbing, way above just going and doing any normal set and bouldering. I don't want to go and just do bouldering in a climbing wall. I want to go and do the comp wall set. It's
So
what I
this is
enjoy
big
the most.
volumes,
Yeah, big
dynamic
volumes, that
moves.
sort of things. I'm absolutely fascinated by them. I love it.
Yeah.
The physicality, the technicality, like there's so much to it. Like I love it. I really love them. Just going and doing the new green circuit down the gym, I'll do it. But that's a session and then I'm bored because there's no comp climbs for me to do. I really love board climbing as well. So like just getting on system boards, trying stuff. I go through a period every month, every year, towards the end of the year in the winter, where it's like board climbing, this is it. I'm doing this right now. And sometimes I'll meander to different walls and get on different boards for a bit, try others.
Are you doing that indoor climbing at the same time as also going outside? So you splitting it 50-50?
It's a bit random. It's
Okay.
like the weather here always dictates a lot what you do. And in the winter, it's often a bit harder to get outside.
Yeah, like today.
Like today, it's terrible outside. I could have been out on the grit, but here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weather dictates it massively. So
So you're quite flexible.
yeah, you have
essentially,
to be
per
quite
week.
flexible. So it's like if there's something I want to do, I will do what I can to do it quickly, first of all, so I can have more skin, more energy to do training or other climbs. A good example for me is a couple years ago, I was setting in Coventry, had a full day setting, good day, worked hard, even had a board session afterwards because I wanted to do some training, but I was planning on going out on the grit the next day. I only went on the board because rather than climbing, because that wall had a lot of like modern compy stuff, because I wanted to save my skin. So I was like trying to decide what is best right now for me to do the following thing I want to do. So it was like setting, be as minimal as I can on the testing to save skin, make sure I'm doing a good job though. And then board climb, not going to trash my skin, but I'll get tired. So I was there for like 12 hours. It was a long day. And then the next morning I got up, I drove to Stanage, and I went and did the ace and careless talk. It was a really good day, obviously, like well stoked. But like careless as an example was like, I had no interest in spending a long time figuring it out, wasting skin, taking big falls, maybe hurting myself. I don't really want to risk hurting myself. So I whacked top rope up on it, cleaned
This
it.
is for everyone listening who doesn't know what careless talk is. This is a really high ball. It's V11, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fontete
Yeah.
arrête at Stanage, which is
It's hard to miss.
Yeah, it's an amazing line. It's a king line. Everyone wants to do it, but it has a certain risk element to it and also a skin element because it's on grit.
Lots of people want to do it ground up because it's the original way of doing it. It's the pure way of doing it. And it's really admirable doing that, crazy, because you're going to have to risk some big falls and like the landing's not too bad, but I wanted to be certain I was going to go and climb another day and be okay. And also I really wanted to just do it. So I whacked a top rope on it. I cleaned it, chalked it up, figured it out and was like, I can do this. Went from the bottom, spent ages trying to figure out the bottom section. It's like broken into two distinct crux sections. There's like a hard boulder mantle section and then a really high arête section. And the first go I got past the bottom bit, I climbed all the way to the top. It was like, I actually didn't do loads of climbing that day. I just managed the climbs quick. Like the ace, I think there was an element of luck in doing that. So quickly, maybe the board session the day before meant my muscles for like pulling and crimping real hard were quite recruited. So it was easier for my body to warm up and be ready for it.
Yeah.
Careless, I obviously practiced it on a rope loads.
So what are you doing to manage skin quality and difference between those, sessions? And you're obviously doing a lot of high volume, hard climbing.
Yeah.
And everyone struggles with this. How are you managing to
Skin
make
is,
that work?
like you said, everyone struggles with it. Skin is one of the biggest battles I struggle with. Like, I have really dry skin. I suffer from eczema and dry skin just as a general thing. It's like, I can't get out of the shower without having to then dry myself off and lather myself in moisturizer. Otherwise, my skin just gets all cracked and dry.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like every climber's nightmare, I think, like just covering themselves in moisturizer to get as soft as they can. But like, I'm just bleeding if I don't, especially on like joints and things.
Yeah. So it's just a really good skin care routine.
Yeah,
basically.
like that's been a thing I've had to do ever since I was a child. And then as I've started pushing myself more, I've realized like my finger skin has become way more important to figure out. The balancing between rock and indoors skin is hard because they're different, especially with compy boulders. Some things my skin works amazingly on and other things it just doesn't. So for me, like I have a life hack actually for any climber who struggles with skin and sanding that no one else seems to do.
Oh yeah.
It's going to become a new thing after this.
Yeah, tell me.
So you know when you're like down the supermarket and you see those little like manicure shops with all those ladies in, and there's this lady like with a little buzzy thing with like files on, and they're like filing their nails down, painting them, right? Go on Amazon and buy like just an electric nail file thing that they would use for manicures, and just get some sandpaper attachment things to them and sand your skin down so accurately and so perfectly. So like any bit splits, joints, bits under your nails, cracks, like you can sand it better than you will with anything else you'll buy in a climbing shop ever. Guarantee it.
Oh really?
Yep.
Oh, interesting. So electric nail file.
Yeah, electric nail file. I might.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I might start buying them and like branding them and selling them myself.
I think you should, Orrin. Get on top of it.
Like that was one of the most. The funny thing is like I figured it out by chance because my girlfriend had one, and I saw it and was like, "What's that?" And she was using it. I was like, "I'm gonna use it."
Yeah.
And now I use it.
Yeah.
And then like on top of that, like the standard advice everyone gives you, like I think certain brands and products work better for other people, but moisturizers and balms work pretty well. Like with splits and things, I think the trick is often like if you've got a nasty split that's not healing, like sand it, moisturize it, put balm over it, leave it overnight so it's like the joint stays straight if the crack's in like the joint, because that way when you heal it and your finger's bent, you wake up the next morning, you're like, oh, it's healed, it's so good, it doesn't hurt. And then you go, oh, I've just ripped it open because you've straightened your hand. Like trying to like splint your finger to heal them is pretty good. But I think like you have to try everything. Try all the brands, try different methods. People have different methods. Some people are like, just go to Boots and buy Elizabeth Arden. I've recently been using like the Pro Balm ones a lot. So just, they do like a cream and a balm now. Yeah. So there's like, I'll just put cream in it to soften it up, and then I'll put the balm over it and then just leave it to dry overnight. And that seems to have been working quite well for me recently.